2023, one of my favorite series to watch on television was the show called The Last of Us, which was a TV adaptation of Sony's PlayStation game with the same name. One of the reasons why I wanted to watch this show is because I love the lead actor, Pedro Pascal. Pedro plays the main character named Joel of the video game, who wears a military-styled field watch that played a significant role at the beginning of the storyline in the game and in the television adaptation. Let me also mention that I'm not a gamer, and so when this game was popular on PlayStation, I was knee-deep in Teletubbies and toddler kids, so I had absolutely zero time to play video games at that point in my life. Matter of fact, I don't play video games at all. However, I love cinema, and I love long-form series on television where I can deep dive into a story. And this show ended up being one of my favorites of 2023. So if you haven't had a chance to see it, I highly recommend it. You don't have to be a gamer or a video game enthusiast to appreciate the storyline and the cinematography of this show. But I digress. The reason why I wanted to make this video is because, as a watch enthusiast, I was infatuated with the military-styled field watch that the character Joel was wearing. Literally around the same time as the show was being released, Draken Watches out of New Zealand had released a military-styled field watch that had a lot of similarities to the watch in the show. I was so excited about the release that Dracen had, I immediately reached out to them to ask if they had a review watch that I can get in on my channel for review so I can make this video last year. Obviously, I don't have a huge YouTube channel, so I never got a response. Which I wasn't surprised. So, what was a watch enthusiast to do? Well, of course, I was going to hunt one down, because that in itself is a large part of my enjoyment of the watch hobby. Finding timepieces that I love, and even if they're not available for sale anymore, I will look high and low to hunt one down. So what you see here today is the Draken Aoraki. Aoraki is named after the Aoraki or Mountain Cook region, which is the highest mountain region and national park in New Zealand. Now, before I dive into specifics of this watch, let's take a look at the watch that Joel from The Last of Us show, the one he wears in the show. Obviously, the watch from the show is not produced by any manufacturer that I'm aware of, but it's your basic field watch, and there are some officially licensed watches that are for sale on the market that demand some ridiculous price points. I'm just assuming they're quartz watches that have the same features then look the same. Other YouTubers at the time tried to nail down similar types of watches that look like the watch from the show as well. In my opinion, Draken did the best job. And I believe this was purely coincidental. Considering the Aoraki was launched about the same time of the show, the time it takes to develop and manufacture a watch like this, it just had to be a coincidence. But if you take a close look at Joel's watch, you'll see it's a field-styled watch on a green NATO strap. The crystal is cracked for a reason. And if you haven't seen the show or played the video game, I'm not going to explain to you the reason why the crystal is cracked to avoid any spoilers for you. But you also notice the watch is a very basic field watch with Arabic numerals around the dial. The 12, 3, and 9, those numerals are enlarged, and there's a subdial at the 6 o'clock. The crown is at a traditional 3 o'clock position. Now in the show, his daughter takes the watch to a repair shop to get a spring repaired as a birthday gift for Joel. In the show, when the watchmaker is looking at the open case back of the watch, you can clearly see the battery and the small quartz movement. The Draken Aoraki is an automatic movement powered by the Miyota 8255, which we will discuss in a moment. If you look at the Draken Aoraki, especially the version that I have in my hand, there are many obvious differences, but from afar you can see the similarities. The most obvious differences are the crown at 4 o'clock on the Draken and the handset as well. But if you look at the Draken website, you'll notice there are 4 different versions of the Aoraki. The first version you'll see is the Flieger. The next one is the Mil-Spec. The version that I have in my hand is the Vector, and it is sold out. The last version is the Zulu, which is also sold out. I do think that the Mil-Spec or the Zulu would be the closest resemblance to Joel's watch from the show. I just happen to like the Vector version the best. There was also a Red Bar special edition of the Vector, which I believe only had 100 units available, which is also sold out. If you don't know what a red bar event is, check to see if you have a local chapter in your area. The group that I go to locally, it's great. We meet every month at the same hotel lobby bar, and it's a group of watch enthusiasts that just love to talk watches for a couple hours. You should check them out. Anyway, back to the Aoraki. I tried to track down one of the red bar editions for sale, but they were sold out before I could get my hands on one, and finding one on the secondary market is going to be challenging, I'm sure. Matter of fact, the one that you see in my hand was purchased from another YouTuber. His channel is called the Anonymous Watch Guy channel, and you should check out his channel as he reviews a ton of watches. I'll leave a link down below where you can find him. He's truly a gentleman who does a great job on reviews, and he does a lot of reviews, so check him out. But let's talk about this particular watch I have in my hand. I have to admit, this is one of the most comfortable watches that I've worn in a very long time. I've owned the watch for about 6 months, and I wear it pretty frequently. Being a black dial field watch, it's so versatile with so many different straps. Not only are the dimensions at 39 millimeters very wearable, but with the 4 o'clock crown, it just never digs. That crown just never digs in the top of my wrist when I'm wearing the Aoraki. But let's talk about the dimensions in a little bit greater detail. Like I said, the watch itself, it's a 39 millimeter case with 20 millimeter lug widths, and it has a 46.5 millimeter lug to lug distance, and it's just over 12 millimeters thick. If you look at the shape of the case, it's a kettle style of shape where the sides of the watch slant inwards ever so slightly, which aids to the wearability of the watch itself. I've seen other reviewers complain about the thickness of the watch, and you would think at 39 millimeters with a 12.5 millimeter thickness that it would be a little stubby, but I haven't experienced this at all. Would it be nice if it was a little thinner? Sure, but I think the sharp angled lugs really help the case hug my 7.25 inch wrist. At first glance, I wasn't sure how I was going to feel about the case design as a whole, but I've really enjoyed wearing this watch. It's such a pleasurable wearing experience. And the fact that it's a unique design, and it's not some carbon copy of every other boring field watch case design on the market, I love that. The watch has this beautiful, flat, sapphire crystal that slightly protrudes above the top of the bezel. The crystal is treated very generously with inner and outer AR coating, which allows for a very vivid view of the matte black dial. I always love it when you can look at a dial in certain light settings and you can't see the crystal. I love that. The movement powering the Aoraki is the Miyota 8255 automatic movement with hacking and hand winding. This movement has a stated accuracy of minus 20 seconds to plus 40 seconds a day with 42 hours of power reserve. This movement features the small second subdial, which is a fan favorite amongst watch enthusiasts, myself included. The watch I have in my hand, it runs very accurate. It's just off a couple of seconds a day. The crown is positioned at 4 o'clock and it's nestled right into where the lug meets the case. The knurling on the crown is very grippy, and the Dracen takes an extra step by putting bloom inside the etching of the logo of the crown. Now, before I talk about the details of the dial, I have to tell you that this lume on this watch is just as powerful and long-lasting as any Seiko diver I have in my collection. And it lasts all night with hours to spare in the morning. It's pretty amazing. The lume comes with 2 different colors, which is a really nice detail you don't often see anywhere. So if you're a lume junkie, you're gonna absolutely love this watch. But let's talk about specifics of the dial. Once again, this is the Vector version, which unfortunately is sold out at this time. My assumption is, without knowing for sure, that Dracen will eventually release a version 2 of this field watch, or at least restock some of the versions that are currently sold out, like the Vector version. Anyway, it's a beautiful matte black dial, and even though it proudly displays the 12, 3, 6, and 9 markers with Arabic numerals, they still manage to fit that subdial above the 6, which allows the watch to feel very proportionate. And without a date display, and by the way, there is no ghost date position in this movement, I have to add that, the dial is perfectly symmetrical with the subdial. The little details like the concentric circles on the subdial is a nice touch that's pretty hard to see with your naked eye when you're just looking at the watch. You really have to take a close look to see that subtle detail. One of the other neat features that you'll notice on the inner chapter ring, which is a brushed stainless steel, is down at the very bottom. It proudly displays assembled in New Zealand. I love that. Each one of the Aoraki models has a slightly different dial, and each handset is slightly different as well. I really love the handset on the Vector model with the arrow hour hand, but if you want something closer to the watch that Joel was wearing in the video game and the show, the mil-spec is probably that version closest to the Last of Us replica watch. I must admit that the handset is brushed, and up against the matte black dial, the contrast of the brushed hands make this watch extremely legible. Looking at the case back, it's a non-display case back. It's a little boring and generic, simply displaying the watch that's made from 316L stainless steel, 100 meters of water resistance with the sapphire crystal. But you're also going to notice that the one in my hand, and that this watch was a prototype, number 000. One last detail I should mention is that on the side of the case, Dracen proudly etched in their company name. There are a few brands that will etch things like this in the side of the case, and probably the most recognizable is Squale or Invicta. Even on my Marathon G-SAR, on the side of the case, it's etched US Marines, but that is specific to that particular model. I know it's a love it or hate it type of thing for watch enthusiasts, but in this case, I don't mind it. Pun intended. Get it? Case? Don't mind it? All right. Anyway, going back to the different models, the Vector was my favorite looking model of the four offerings. But as I mentioned before, I do think the mil-spec is the version that closest resembles Joel's watch from the show. And on the Draken website, they are currently still in stock with the Flieger and the mil-spec. The price of the Aoraki is $399, and I think that's a pretty good deal for what you get. Originally, the watch ships on a bone strap with a single pass NATO strap. The NATO strap that's supplied, it's a little thick for my liking, so I prefer to wear it on some of these options. Check them out. Even if you're not a fan of the show or the video game, this Aoraki watch is an amazing little field watch for the price. 100 meters of water resistance, screw down crown, great lume, and a cool complication like small second subdial. It's a nice package. Yeah, it's just a three-hand watch, so there is no dive bezel to fiddle around with, or time things like making French press coffee or boiling noodles, or free diving 1,000 meters below the surface of the sea like most of us desk diving watch enthusiasts do. But it's a simple watch that's easy to wear. It's very versatile, keeps great time, and is extremely legible. At the sub $400 price point, you can't really beat it. Well guys, if you made it this far, let me introduce myself. My name is Blake. As you can tell, I'm a bit of a watchaholic, and I'm going to assume if you made it this far, you're a watchaholic too. Don't forget to subscribe, like the video, and comment down below. If you think there's a watch that has a closer similarity to Joel's watch than this, I'd love to hear what you found. Anyway, thanks for listening in. I'll see you guys on the next video.